Спасибі.
Будь ласка.
So, are we ready? Good afternoon. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody here in Ukraine Media Center. I'd like to remind you that we have been supported by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and the Ministry of Internal Affairs. I would also like to thank the Skyloft Hotel, providing us with premises here. Today we are to have another briefing. I would like to introduce head of the main directorate of the National Police of Ukraine for Kyiv Oblast, Kyiv province. We have Andriy Nebytov with us. He will tell you about the situation in Kyiv Oblast. We'll cover a bit evacuation of civilians, criminal situation in the province, so you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to remind you that the police in Kyiv province, like everybody else, has been working under intensified mode of operation, and there are several aspects within which we are operating in the recent weeks. First of all, we were worried very much about evacuation of people who were in those occupied, invaded areas, combat areas. People didn't have natural gas, electricity, water, whatever, and more to it, they were humiliated and tortured by those invaders. Many times we got information that people are killed, people are beaten, they're murderers, there was theft and other types of wrongdoing. So people try to leave the combat areas as soon as possible to save their lives. Many people, many children and females, as well as elder people, remained in those areas. You know that at the beginning of this war, many hospitals and those elderly houses remained in those areas occupied by Russian invaders, and people did not have any help there. For this reason, the local authorities, the police, the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, with support from the Red Cross, arranged respective routes. And the key areas of our operations included Bucha district and Bravery district. In Vyshhorod district, they were virtually on their own without any coordination of those green corridors. It was very important for us to get as many people out of there as possible. Initially, it was very difficult to establish communications because the Russian leadership, after those agreements upon creating such green corridors, unfortunately, the Russian leadership did not follow those agreements. Very often buses would come back empty and people remained in the streets and squares waiting for an opportunity to leave those combat areas. But unfortunately, the invaders did not allow them to get to the buses and leave those cities and towns. Later, it went in a more organized way. We would send those buses, and I'd like to tell you that in the last 2 weeks we managed to get more than 70,000 people out of there in a centralized manner. While also a lot of people left in their own cars. and it was possible to attach them to the Red Cross convoy, and the convoy with those buses with people who were moving from occupied territories. Unfortunately, it has all been happening not without shelling, not without losses among peaceful, innocent civilians. Such cases of shelling took place in Bucha district during evacuation, and such shellings also happened in Bravery district. During evacuation of people, even tanks shooted and shelled sometimes. In Vyshhorod district, during evacuation, our police officer died. Unfortunately, the invaders learned about the place where we would meet people who were living town of Demidov, and while we were waiting for yet another batch of people to come there, there was a mortar shelling against our officers, and one person was wounded, our criminal investigation officer and a criminal search officer, and the other one was killed. The same happened during evacuation in Irpin, when at the very last moment we were taking children in our cars, and we had our officer from the patrol police there in his police car, and Grad missile hit this car, and his car was burnt, and only now we managed to get the remainings of his dead body. So unfortunately, the enemy acts in such a way where they initially agree to evacuate the civilians, but they use those agreements to take time to regroup their troops and strengthen their trenches. But we continue working. The most important for us is about people, to get as many people out of there as possible. Also, shellings do not stop in Kyiv province. Yesterday, Novi Petrivtsi village was shelled for the very first time. Absolutely peaceful village without any military facilities there. And the Russians did hit private residential buildings and the shop. No military infrastructure facilities there, no military there. Also, journalists die, both international foreign journalists and Ukrainian journalists. You know that recently in Irpin, while trying to make a video of all that destruction and violence against people, a journalist from Time, a US citizen, was died and his colleague was wounded. By the way, the driver who was moving them, carrying them around Irpin, we still cannot find the driver. We have found their car, we have checked it, and there are no chattels, nothing in that car. And recently, on the 14th of March, our young lady, our female journalist, Ukrainian journalist, and her colleague from Fox News, I think, were killed. His colleague, citizen of Ireland, was killed, and their other colleague, another citizen of Ireland, was wounded. It's all happening every day. And when we see death of journalists, foreign journalists, death of police officers, you have to understand. You can imagine how many civilians are killed in those occupied territories. According to the people living those territories, you know, they tell terrible stories. They tell us how dead bodies remain for a long time just on the streets, in building entrances. People who take their hands up and show that they have no weapons, they're civilians, they're still shooted and killed. Such behavior of the enemy means that they don't care about any rules and customs of war. So the procedural response of the law enforcement agencies will be there, and I do hope that international law enforcement would also respond. Thank you, Andriy. Now, I'd like to ask journalists, if you have any questions, you're welcome. Does anybody want to ask anything? You're welcome. Please speak into the microphone.
I'm Viktor Melnikov from CGTN. Could you please tell us, before the curfew was extended, there were rumors saying that the army, police, and territorial defense forces would somehow move against Russian forces in Kyiv province, or were those just rumors? Well, decisions are only made by military and political leadership of the nation about counterattacking, because you understand that they have more information, more sources of information to analyze and make decisions. I can only tell you that there have been active combat operations after a certain successful attack of armed forces of Ukraine in the area of Irpin, Hostomel, and Nemyshaevo, where there was a high-quality, effective artillery strike, which enabled our Ukrainian armed forces to move forward, and now there are active combat operations there. First of all, according to my information, it changed a lot the situation. It destroyed the enemy's plans about the first attempt to attack the city of Kyiv. Another question I have is this. There has been information whereby Irpin, town of Irpin, has been controlled, 30% of it has been controlled by Russian troops. Is it the same now, and how the situation changed now after what you mentioned now? Well, in the town of Irpin now, there are still active combat operation there. The enemy already prepared some defense positions there. They have been now destroyed, but regrouping the troops and creation of some sabotage groups enables the enemy to act all across town of Irpin. So we have those problems where journalists are killed, civilians are killed. When somebody appears either from the forest or from some other places and they start killing. So it's difficult to say that there are so many percents of the town being held by us or by them. It's difficult to describe it in that way. You have to wait for official reports or information from the military. Now the military would say either we have that town, we control it, or we don't control it. But the special operations continue not only by the armed forces of Ukraine, but by also other uniformed agencies. I can confirm that. Thank you.
The Economist and the Financial Times. Can you tell us whether the Russian forces still control all of Bucha, or have you moved forward?
Well, currently we can say that a lot of Russian troops are there in Bucha. We, as police of the Kyiv province, keep receiving reports, keep receiving information about criminal offenses, military crimes committed in Bucha, starting from crimes against property and violent crimes which have been happening there. Also, other sources confirm with their information that there is a lot of Russian troops there who continue to resist against the armed forces of Ukraine there.
Hello, Colin Freeman from the Daily Telegraph, London. Could you give us any more detail on what kind of crimes are being committed? Any specific incidents that struck you? Also, it's been said that that there's been rapes carried out by Russian troops. Have you been able to confirm that at all? And if so, how often has that been occurring?
Специфічні злочини. І, зокрема, зґвалтування. Да, зрозуміло.
Look, with regard to specific crimes, I can tell you that, killing of innocent civilians is already a specific crime. More to it is an international crime under international regulations, and they have to be liable for that in the International Court of Law. You cannot kill a mother with a child or shoot at the family where a man, his wife, and their child would die in a car. Now about rapes specifically, we got that information from social networks. However, currently I can tell you that officially this information has not been confirmed. Nobody reported to police with regard to such rapes. But we understand that currently we are unable to complete 100% reliable information from those occupied territories. We will only be able to analyze that information and provide you with a clear and open answer after we liberate those territories and after people there get to safety and would be able to provide us with that sort of information. Friends?
My name is Yilmaz Akıncı from Al Jazeera. I would love to ask the question that last 11 days, especially when we see the Kyiv siege, Russians are not able to proceed further away, and almost last 11 days they're almost in same position. There was a rumor that, like, they cannot supply their soldiers, and there was a serious resisting. What can you say about this? And I will have a second question after that.
Thank you for this question. First of all, I'd like to tell you that you have seen with your own eyes that there was a myth that in 3 days or in a week somebody would be able to take Kyiv. That's impossible. Somebody definitely overestimated their capacity and underestimated their enemy. So I can tell you that they stay in the same position because due to good operations and well-coordinated operations of the armed forces of Ukraine and other uniformed agencies with support from civilians, you see that we have been fighting as a country to stop this invasion. And I'd like to tell you that there was that spirit of we would win soon and so on, but it has disappeared. It disappeared long ago because our armed forces are operating, are working, and the National Guards and the Special Operations Forces are working to destroy their food convoys, to destroy fuel convoys with foodstuffs and everything. So we see that some Russian soldiers keep chewing their lunchbox for the third day. They have stolen from villages, they have stolen from people, but they run out of food, they run out of water, so they have been demoralized. They don't want to do anything because they are unwilling to do anything because there is a serious armed response from the armed forces of Ukraine. They are not supported by a local population, local people. Most people treat them in a very negative way. There is active guerrilla movement making maximum to scare our people. For each shooting, for each destroyed building, for each destroyed school, they will be brought to liability. There are no strikes against military facilities, military objects anymore. They just cannot resist properly to armed forces of Ukraine. So probably they just get angry or they lack confidence and they start hitting everything they see.
My last question, I'm sorry to ask him 3 questions. We are seeing a lot of air attack, and we are seeing you're responding back. Can you approximately give us number how many air attack daily happening? Because some of them not landing because you're shooting up on air. Like how many air missiles or something like per day they are trying to attack in Kyiv? I'm especially asking.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question. To get more accurate information, you should ask the armed forces of Ukraine. But we see every day that not only Kyiv, but also Odessa and other cities and towns have our air defense working, and as a result there are fragments of those missiles, and the police always record those places, those locations where those fragments of missiles drop. We document them and execute proper procedural documents. I can tell you from the police side that we already have seen facts of such missiles being down, so we do have our anti-air defense and it works. I'd like to add, dear friends, tomorrow at 2 p.m. we'll have a briefing by the armed forces of Ukraine, and it will be about Kyiv, and he will tell you something and answer all your questions, so you're welcome.
I just want to follow up on that comment that you made about Russian forces getting angry and lacking confidence and starting to hit everything they can see. That's what you said. We had a press briefing just before with Alexei Arestovich, the presidential advisor, and he said, I can't say that I think that they are deliberately trying to hit civilian targets in Kiev. He said he thought that it's like either they were hitting them because they were missing what they were trying to hit, or because 1 in 4 was being intercepted. So can we be clear about this? Do you think that the civilian targets that we've seen being hit in the last 48 hours, or 72 hours rather, are deliberate, or they're not deliberate?
Look, definitely they want to destroy military facilities. They try to resist and to counteract when they are attacked by Ukrainian armed forces. But when they shell Kyiv is a peaceful city, and 98% of Kyiv is civilian facilities. So you have to have highly precise weapons to hit some military target. This is one thing. Second, you also have somebody who can use those weapons. And also there should be precise coordinates of that military target. So they are lacking the first, the second, and the third. And for these reasons we have this result. They start artillery shelling and they only hit civilian facilities, because in Kyiv 98, if not 99% of Kyiv is about civilian, social, humanitarian premises. Any more questions?
There was a curfew yesterday for 36 hours. Could the officer please tell us what the exact purpose of the curfew was? For example, we heard that it might be because they were worried about Russian saboteur groups coming in. Was it that, or was it some other reason?
Thank you for your question. Well, you're right. One of the key reasons is sabotage and reconnaissance groups trying to get inside our territory, or some groups entered it previously and they would start act in an active way. And that was within the context of first possible attempts to attack our city. So, of course, in order to make life easier for our territorial defense, for our armed forces, and for police, that extended curfew was introduced. I'd like to immediately thank our residents and guests of our city and Kyiv province, thank them for their understanding, because yesterday I was checking the situation across the province and I saw that people fully comply with that curfew, which enabled our security forces to do their job and to fully ensure proper order in our territory. Any more questions? No questions? Or there is some?
One more, if I may. Could you describe a little bit about the situation in Bravery to the east of Kiev? What exactly is happening there at the moment?
Well, in city of Bravery, people just keep working in a normal mode of operation. Police is there, local authorities are there, territorial defense is there, all those fortifications are there, they work. But we do have a problematic issue about villages of Bogdanivka, Shevchenkova and Peremoga. Those towns and villages have been occupied. Bogdanivka, Shevchenkova and Peremoga have been occupied by Russian troops, and we get information about violence, about crimes, general crimes and war crimes there, of international crimes of international nature, and crimes against local population. So just yesterday, buses were sent again. There seems to be a green corridor, and we hope that we'll get as many people as possible from there.